Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Good morning and welcome, a warm welcome to day 2 of the MENAICT Forum 20. Discussions delving into ICT in the region, Jordan, and further afield as well. And guess what? We've got another, if you enjoyed yesterday, we have got another full day today of discussions, jumping into digital tech and pretty much everything in between as well. So just a few things to get through before we kick off with our first panel discussion this morning. Remember our hashtag MENAICT18, MENAICT18. Guess what? It was on fire yesterday on around the region, Jordan, viral around Jordan and the region as well. We're going to do the same again. So things you hear, quotes, images, conversations that you have, things that you like to share out with partners and people that you think would be interested to hear what's happening over yesterday and today, please share that out as well. Remember, we are live streaming as well, so everything that happens on this stage doesn't just happen within these 4 walls, although this is not, they are not walls, it is 1 wall, I believe. Anyway, so if you go onto the MENAICT Forum Facebook page, there's a link there. Share that out with as many people as you can, and we can invite the world to see what's happening here today as well. One other thing to remember also, our coffee break will not be out here behind me downstairs. It will actually be in the startup exhibition area, so that give you a chance to grab a coffee and to wander and have a look at some of the great 12 big ideas, the startups there. Again, they want conversations with you. It'd be great if you could pop over, have a look, curious, and see exactly what they've got to offer as well. We also have the simultaneous translations also, so at any stage where we flip over, and we've done that quite a few times yesterday, I imagine we'll do the same again today, English or Arabic. We have the headsets which you can get just behind you at the top there. Right, let's kick off with our first discussion of the day, the first topic of the day. As you can see, it was up there. The topic is delegating to machines and keeping human focus on innovation. So, machines, the role of machines, it's a topic that comes up across the world at tech events. Pretty much everywhere. We're going to jump into that topic and see really the real role of machines, and see also the role of humans in terms of innovation as well. The gentleman that is actually going to shape this panel discussion, please put your hands together for Crown Prince Foundation founder, Mr. Wael Massaroueh.
Be the first session in the morning. Only the people who are really enthusiastic and with lots of energy would come on a holiday, so nice to have you here. It's very exciting to be discussing such a topic in such a day, in such a forum. The concept of automation, innovation, human beings, and how do you put those whole thing together. I was, mentioned as the manager of Fab Lab Foundation. Well, I am actually a consultant there, and actually I am a consultant at the Hussein Technical University. Why do I say this? Because although I am not an IT person, but I am it seems in whatever you are, from wherever you are in the middle of this automation, cycle. This whole thing of automation is not new. I was, discussing with the esteemed group here that, the concept of automation has always been there. When I was in college, I'm a mechanical engineer, I'm a manufacturing engineer, I've been in industry for many years. What's interesting is that automation has been there since the start of humanity, but in different forms. The one that I witnessed during my life is the one that where you start with hard automation, when you do it with gears and everything, and people think of factories and cars and what have you. And then sometime when this microprocessor became cheap enough, people started programming. I think for us, when I was in college, that was a very exciting period. We started programming lines instead of machining a cam or machining a gear or what have you. With time, other concepts started coming out. People started talking about, automation of workflows, automation of processes, automation of this, automation of that. And then suddenly the concept of artificial intelligence started coming in. It was really interesting. I took a course in artificial intelligence in college in 1986. I was doing my master's in the States. Many of the concepts we were talking about were there. We were talking about them, but technology was not up to it. I was once invited to work on a project on an autonomous vehicle in 1987 in the States also. It was a Chrysler minivan with 4 Sun workstations in the car. It was really a big hassle to put the workstations in the car. So now we don't even talk about it. Artificial intelligence suddenly is becoming mainstream. Autonomous vehicles about to become mainstream. Automation is embedded in our life. We started looking at things in a completely, now we started looking at the social aspects, technological aspects, business aspects, and all of this is creating actually lots of interesting dilemmas that we have to solve. And this will be the topic of our session today, We're very fortunate to have a very distinguished group of people on the panel with varying background. Actually, during our discussion and setting up for this session, we were kind of discussing how are we going to take the flow of this discussion so as we decided that we will talk concepts and we take examples and then we will close with social and many issues that actually impact the introduction of automation to our life. I am fortunate to have an interesting group of people over here from different backgrounds. Miss Samah, sorry, I have to take my paper. Miss Samah Alafeef is actually a computer scientist, a senior data management associate with the UNHCR, with varying backgrounds in different aspects of automation, robotics, as she will talk to us about it, and also in data management. And actually, what's more interesting is the implementation of many of these concepts into humanitarian aspects. So it's a very, very important concept. We have Mr. George Dimitriou, who is visiting us from Greece, has a master's in mathematics, computer science from Germany, and has a very wide experience in all over the world in many different areas related to implementation of computer science and projects, and he would give us a very interesting aspect of the social and the technological aspect of automation. We have Mr. Muhannad Al-Baydad from Oracle, again, a very well-versed human being in terms of implementations of workflows, in terms of business and government. And last but not least, Mr. Bobby Waransai, CEO of Marcel Consulting, and he's coming to us from Malaysia. If you look at his CV, a very interesting CV, covered a wide aspect of interesting aspect, computer science, and also all over the world. We're very fortunate to have you here, and we're looking forward to a very interesting session. We will start with Bobby. Bobby, you will actually give us an interesting idea about the overall view of concept of automation and how does it integrate into the world. You will show us a bit of a presentation, and we look forward to hearing from you. Please. Thank you.
Spend a quick few minutes on the stage as it relates to the topic at hand. machine learning, machines, automation, innovation, and what's happening in the world. And we'll talk on some of the impacts that have been pertinent. They have been pointed out during yesterday's discussion as well. Let me quickly jump into this and first talk to you about the evolution of technologies. I'm sure you're all aware, over the last broadly 250 odd years, we've had what's known as, in the economic cycles, called quantitative circles. It has always been innovation, there has always been transformation through introduction of technologies. While did mention about a whole lot of those robotic arms and other stuff that he had seen in the 80s. Those are all part of technological transformation. So what we are now is known as the sixth wave or Industry 4.0, whichever term you would like to choose. The difference, and the biggest difference, we rethink the way in which we manage enterprises, the way we manage societies, the way government manages a nation or a set of relationships around the world. Let's jump in quickly into the whole automation spectrum, right? You've heard about digital labor, you've heard about talent crunch, you've heard all over, you keep speaking about the need for new skills. Yesterday we had some vociferous discussions around universities still teaching people the old way, right, going back to the 70s, and our industries unable to employ people because their skills are necessary yet insufficient to the modern era of requirements by a company. What is this fundamental reason all about? That's the digital transformation is also influencing labor from basic automation all the way through to cognitive sciences. Now, it would be foolhardy for anyone who is in the transactional automation space to argue that they are actually using artificial intelligence. It is more marketing rhetoric than reality. I think so my first recommendation would be is to make a substantial distinction between what is transactional automation and what is really cognitive sciences. Cognitive sciences has not really gotten off the labs yet outside of a deep mind or a Google brain. It is still in its infancy. The only cognitive technology that is worth any discussion that is today being utilized in the world is CRISPR. I'm sure you all heard about the gene editing technologies. That's the only AI-based solution that really works. And nothing else has really come out of labs. So let's get back to what it is today. It's basic automation. And basic automation is essentially transactional. So yes, there's no issue in terms of automation. We've had mechanization for 100 years. What is fundamentally different with today's automation is in the nature of its influence on enterprises. Earlier, a new technology, when it was introduced, it used to complement a human endeavor. So a certain repetitive task, when you introduce a machine into that process, whether it was a robot or a little bit of an automated lathe machine instead of an old machine, it complemented human behavior. The human's job got transformed and he started doing slightly more intelligent things. What is happening in today's context is that the machines have come to a certain level of advancement that they believe, we have still not seen any proof in the pudding yet, that machines could completely replace humans. That is the fundamental challenge. However, in the context of transactional automation, today we are not automating roles, we are still automating tasks. So let me give you a fundamental example in the technology world for the IT service companies. In 2008, if you were to run a $100 million book to deliver IT services, software development, application maintenance and support services, you would need on an average anywhere between 3,500 to 4,000 qualified individuals to deliver the services, given the level of and maturity of technologies there. Today, you can do that exact same $100 million worth of work with no more than 250 people. That is a fundamental challenge today we are facing. So let's look at the influence of labor in its context. The transformation of labor is moving across from discrete tasks to complete replacement. And you've all heard about chatbots. I'm sure you all keep dealing with chatbots in extremely discrete fashions and manners. But it has come to a point, and I would ask you to download an app called Replica, Replica with a K, which essentially replicates your entire behavior, and it's chatbots learning by individual interactions. So if you think of a call center environment or a help desk environment in the current context, A chatbot is essentially structured around a set of instructions at the back end. It only responds to that behavior as you ask the question. And if you ask a question out of context, it doesn't respond. But today's chatbots, and as we go into the future, you start seeing that the chatbots are learning from individual behavior by interacting with multiple customers, and they're aggregating that learning. And I know Mohammed will talk to you a lot about machine learning, and that's where it comes to play. So this is the transformation of digital technologies that is influencing human capital. So let's not get too overboard in terms of job replacements, because there's a lot of rhetoric coming from all the large consulting firms that says that millions and millions of jobs will go away. Partly it's right that there's a larger context and a more complex context. Let me set the stage with respect to what's happening with workforce itself. And I think this part of the world, the larger Arab world, does distinctly suffer. Approximately 100 million people in the age group of 18 to 25 are jobless, and approximately 500 million individuals in that same age group are not in employment, education, and training. And these are big economic issues for any country to manage. So I would like to think that when we talk to governments and we ask for specific policies pertaining to our industry, and we say, give me this tax holiday or give me this flexibility, we need to definitely appreciate the larger complex context within which a government operates, whether it is a Jordanian government or a UAE government or Singapore or Indonesia. The larger context is job creation. You and I are busy pursuing balance sheets, and we would like to get it smarter, more efficient, more highly effective, and if we can do it with less number of jobs, so be it, right? Because we are all capitalist in nature anyway. However, the larger context with governments is not necessarily capitalism. So we will have to marry the two, and that's where solutions need to come to play. So these are the realities with respect to labor. But in the context of organizations, the transformation is in digital transformation of the workforce itself. You understand the pyramid nature of corporations, right? At the top, you got the most intelligent, most senior, most experienced people. At the bottom, you got agents, right? It's a big triangle. And what is happening today with transaction automation is at the bottom is all the way down. So that's the complaint we have, that an individual, when he comes out of college with a fancy course, fancy degree, he's just unemployable in your corporate context because he is used to an instruction-oriented way of life. Whereas you're expecting the person to be fairly cognitive. So human capital transformation does not necessarily happen if organizational transformation doesn't happen. So when we talk in the larger context, and I will leave it for a bigger conversation during the panel itself, is what are we delegating to machines? What do we want to delegate to machines? We have been delegating to machines a lot of the transactional drudgery for a long time. The fundamental difference has been to move that drudgery from the manufacturing space into the services space, which opens up a wider field of play, and it also opens up a substantial amount of disruption. That's a fundamental difference. So we're delegating simple transactions because we want to get it faster. For example, a bank wants to issue a loan in 2 minutes. Right? The only way that is possible is to eliminate human interaction in that verification process from an application to a disbursement. That is possible if you set some parameters. That's where machine learning comes to play. And that's exactly what is happening today. Because in a hyper-competitive world, technologies are enabling us to do the right things. Okay, so what are we innovating? Is that delegation innovation in the true sense of the term? I think we're missing the point here. My personal view is that's not innovation. It is going to happen anyway. It is operational efficiency. From approving a loan in 3 days to approving a loan in 2 minutes is efficiency. We haven't fundamentally altered the process. We've just dumped it on and delegated to a faster technology. But what is innovation in the true sense of the term? And is it going to be driven by a fear of job losses, or is it going to be driven by a set of needs that we want to transform nation states, we want to transform lifestyles, we want to establish hyper-connectedness in a very connected world? I think that is a larger question I would like to touch upon as we go through the remainder of the panel. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bobby. I think you have set a good background for a further discussion. In our timing for the session, we'll keep enough time for discussion with the audience. And actually, I think we will try to raise more questions than we will actually answer in this session. Yes, it's very important to answer many of these questions. Number one, which always been the fear of automation: are we going to replace people? I mean, how are we going to replace people? What's going to happen with the people that will be actually pushed aside by automation? That's a dilemma that will always be there, and we will try to address this even during the remaining, presentations and discussions, and also during the audience discussion. Ms. Samah, we will, really what you have done in the area of humanitarian work, and you have how you integrated automation, be it through processes or through even the use of robots to actually impact some of the lives positively. That, while we're talking about automation, that would, while solving problems might create some other problems, it'd be interesting to see some actually very interesting and humanitarian applications in this, and kind of puts people at ease. We're interested to hear what you have to say on this.
Thank you, Wael, for this introduction, and thank you all for attending this very early but interesting session. There is much to discuss, but I will not have the time to review everything, so I would like to highlight a few key points. When talking about robotics and artificial intelligence, we are talking about a very fast revolution, and it's really going fast. For the future, which is a source of fear for a lot of us, I think it will come with a lot of opportunities and a lot of future jobs. I think these technologies, the artificial intelligence and robots, will upgrade the current existing jobs that we are performing now. It took a very long time to move from the manual cash working in the banks to the ATMs, but I think it will take a shorter time to move from the current banking practices to the smart banking or using robots to serve people and clients. For the current private sector, I think they are already progressing in the artificial intelligence. Yet for non-profit organizations, in light of the current situations, and we are surrounded by crises from every direction, and there is a lack of funds, a lack of resources, and also a lot of competition for the existing resources. We need to efficiently and effectively utilize these resources. So humanitarian organizations need to learn from the private sector. For the humanitarian organization, there are too many examples in using artificial intelligence and robotics for the humanitarian work. I will back first to the point of fear that some of people have from using robotics, or having a fear of robotics, that they will replace our jobs. Can I ask you, how many of you have that fear, or how many of you think that robots, when robots take over the routine work, we will lose our jobs? Yeah, there is a people here attending this conference who think the robots will take over our jobs. I think that when robots take over the routine work, they will leave time for humans for innovation. Because even if the robots take the ordinary routine work, creativity will still a human gift. And emotional intelligence, creativity, innovation, and compassion cannot be replaced by zeros and ones. So the ATM upgrade the job for the person who was doing the manual work. And on the other side, we will create another jobs for the technology and programming people. For the humanitarian work, we have a lot of examples. For example, the WFP applied blockchain for cash transfer. Blockchain is a technology that helps in reducing the cost for the third party and transferring the money directly to the beneficiaries. Also, UNHCR is using biometrics, IRIS, for the humanitarian work. I would like to mention one of the projects I proposed, and honor was health centers. I always focus on the point that when we propose technology solution, there must be a reason behind this solution. There must be a business need behind the solution. I was working in the e-health project, and Honor was on the Honor HQ. And I was involved in the clinics and the daily work for the health centers. I noticed that the diabetes mellitus cost was painful for the agency, and global-wise, it's a common problem. And there's a lot of diseases associated to it, like the early and late complications, sometimes it leads to total blindness for the patients. So the diabetes is a source of cost that all governments and NGOs are suffering from. There was a great effort by UNRWA to raise the awareness for the diabetes mellitus patients so they can control their disease and stay in a controlled status. But these solutions was limited and was not sustainable because of the lack of funds. I was thinking of proposing a project in artificial intelligence that would be a robust and sustainable project. And I proposed a patient-robot interaction for diabetes management. A robot, a human-like machine, who can detect the motion of the person and conduct a face recognition to determine that person. And after that, it can bring the data from the e-health database, and based on the data of the patient, it can perform interactive advices, voice advices with the patient and raise their awareness. This will solve the problem of the large queue that stands in front of the healthcare provider door, the large queue that are just sitting and waiting for their turn. And this waiting time will be reduced. People will go and talk to a human-like robot, and they will take enough awareness about their health status, their medicine, and also some of the patients. I noticed that they go out of the camp, they make shopping until their turn is come, because there's a lot of funds and there's limited resources in front of that large number of patients. This was a pain because there is a hypertension and diabetes people who cannot wait for a long time, and this have health implications on them. This robot, we will put a cost on the first time, but the cost for the long run will be much less than the current manual practices. I know we are running out of time for my turn. Thank you all for listening.
Thank you, Samah. Mohammed, you come from Oracle. Oracle is, one of those big leading names in areas related to workflows, ERPs, even introduction of artificial intelligence in processes and organizations. During preparing for this, you said that you have been very heavily involved in these things, and that you would have a very nice perspective on how businesses and even sometimes how governments are working toward the implementation of automation, workflow, artificial intelligence, in making things much more efficient and productive. Please, we're looking forward to you.
Excellent. Thank you, Ryan, and considering Samin, so my name is Mohammed Al-Baydat, and as Ryan was saying, I work at Oracle, so I'm doing a lot of work related to running enterprise software for businesses. So I'll talk about AI from the concept or the perspective of machine learning, and how machine learning applies within the software industry, and how it helps basically allow you to use the different business softwares and also the infrastructure related activities that you do in your business in a more efficient fashion. So if we maybe take a step back a little bit and just demystify what machine learning is and how it works. So the idea is, imagine you walk into a bank and you're requesting a loan. You're buying a house or a car or whatever. So what the loan officer will do is they will ask you a series of questions. What's your age? How much money do you make? Where do you live? How long have you been at a particular job? Do you currently own a house or not? And then based on those answers, they will decide, they will put all of that information in an IT system, in a software product, and then they decide that you are eligible to take that loan because you're more likely to pay it versus not. So that's the traditional way of doing things. A more machine learning based approach would be benefiting from the historical data that you have about all your customers, their profile, all of that personal and professional information that they have, and whether they actually did pay their loan or they defaulted on their loan. So I take all of that historical data and then I allow the program to adaptively decide or give me the recommendation whether that person should take a loan because they're more likely to pay versus not. So the idea of machine learning is not to have systems that are built on a rigid set of rules that will say 1, 2, 3, if so, then give them the loan versus not. Instead, it builds a model or a pattern of behaviors of all your existing historic customer base, what their characteristics were, and whether they paid their loans or not. So adaptively decide whether a particular new customer that walks in and gives you their information will pay their loan or not. And the way this is beneficial to you if you're running such a business is it scales much better and it adapts itself continuously to the data. So if you have different patterns of people paying or not paying, as they interact with your system, the system will automatically adapt itself. I don't have to go back to my software developer, IT department, my software vendor, and ask them to change the product to match the new behavior of customers. The product will adaptively enhance itself. So machine learning, that's where it comes in. It's, again, benefits from the data that you already have. Now, the ideas behind machine learning and the science behind it has been around for decades and in certain cases, centuries. So Bayes' rule, for example, or probability theory, has been around for a lot of time. Bayes' rule is a very fundamental rule that's used in machine learning. It was published in the 1700s, and we have a lot of papers and books that have been written throughout the years and the past few decades around how to use data to identify patterns and to predict behaviors. So examples of that, like if I want to buy a house and it costs a certain amount of money, is it likely that that house price will go up in value? So how do I predict a particular price movement for the house or an apartment or a piece of land that I want to invest in? If I'm in consumer services or maybe selling services to my customers in telecom or what have you, I want to predict the lifetime value of that customer. How long that customer is likely to stay with me? Is there a risk that that customer will leave my service or my product and go to a competitor product? So there are a lot of different algorithms and models to tackle different types of business challenges that you can implement using machine learning. Now, if you're running a company, you have a lot of different departments with that company. So it's not only that you want to improve customer relationship, customer retention, and increase maybe the customer value, but you also want to make sure that you retain top talent and you hire the right talent for your company. So machine learning can come in and help in that. So if let's say I have a new job opening for a position and I get hundreds or thousands of resumes applying to that position, how do I match the right setup? How do I do pre-screening of the resumes without manual human intervention? So going back to the point that was mentioned by the previous panelists, we talked about will machines replace human beings? It's more machines will complement the work and the amount of effort that a human being needs to do. So instead of having the human being spend their time on mundane, error-prone, boring, bureaucratic tasks, I will have them spend it on more intelligent tasks. So instead of having a human being set through 100 resumes, I can have a machine learning algorithm that matches the resume to the job position that I have, weeds out the ones that don't make sense for me to even look at. And then the next thing is I'll look at patterns in my system. So I have maybe an accountant, I'm looking for an accountant. So I have a very successful accountant in my company. In my appraisal system, I'm capturing characteristics of that accountant. So those characteristics can also help me come up with the right interview process for a new accountant that I'm trying to bring into my company, so that they have the potential of being a successful candidate in the company. So if you're running a business in HCM, as I mentioned, you can do that. You can also look for signs of top talents leaving your company, maybe again through the appraisal system, maybe through the competition that's happening in the market for top talent. If you're in the financials department, you're looking for fraudulent activities that may be happening in your system that are hard to detect manually. If you are in sales, which is a favorite topic by everyone, how do I increase sales? How do I give the right offer to the right customer? Because I know from their behaviors that they are more likely to sign up for a particular type of service or to buy new products from me. and so forth. So there are so many applications in every department. And last but not least, the IT department itself. So, coming from Oracle, we not only have business software, but we also work with our customers on the IT side, running databases, running middleware software, and things of nature that help them build their own custom solutions, custom software solutions. So on the IT side, you have a huge amount of time and effort and money spent on managing IT systems. So a typical example is a database. I need to patch the database, I need to upgrade it, I need to make sure I'm on the latest security levels to avoid any risk to basically leaking data outside of my organization. I need to make sure that there's no regression of performance when I upgrade from one version to the next. And all of this, up until maybe a couple of years ago, has been a very time-consuming human activity that requires very highly skilled personnel. Now we have machine learning built inside of those software components. So the database can patch itself, can upgrade itself, and can even auto-tune itself to make sure that the performance level is guaranteed between upgrades and between additional IT projects that are invested. So how do I take advantage of all of that? How do I get started? How do I create an IT strategy for my company? So I think the first thing you have to do is find a real solution, a real business problem or a challenge that you have today, and start with that. We've seen a lot of hype around machine learning, around blockchain, and what we've seen alongside the hype is people looking for a problem to fit to that technology so that they are on the cutting edge of implementing technology. I think instead you have to go back and look at your pain points, look at your business challenges, and see where machine learning can help you with a particular problem. Formulate that problem. A very good example, I think all of us here that are seeing the investment from the telecom companies in fiber, installing fiber by the ISP provider, internet service providers. We're seeing a lot of competition between them, but to be able to lock you in as a customer, they basically give you a very good introductory price, but they lock you in for years. They will tell you, sign a contract for 3 years, and I'll give you 300 megabits at 35 Jordanian dinars, which is a very compelling story, but at the same time, it means we're not taking advantage of how the customer is using the service. Is the customer happy with my service? Are they using it continuously? How can I look for signs that that customer is more likely to leave me to a competitor because they're unhappy with my service, rather than resort to all methods of locking you in with a contract that's 3 years long or 5 years long and so forth. So I can use machine learning to improve that particular aspect of it, reduce the customer churn, customers going from my service to another service. So again, the first idea is, or the starting point is, what is the business challenge that I have? What is the goal that I'm trying to achieve? So the business challenge, let's say losing a customer. The goal is to keep that customer and increase their lifetime value for me. The next thing is, what kind of data do I need? Again, machine learning is based on data. Without data and without clean data, you cannot really come up with the right set of recommendations and models. So what is the right set of data that I need? Data can be customer behavior, how they're using my service, are they finding a lot of service requests, do they have a lot of complaints about my data? Data could be external factors. The government just increased the tax on the internet or telecom. That's why my customers are not charging as often as they used to. It could be also things related to customer priorities. Maybe if they're using a cell phone, maybe they are moving to a different region and that region doesn't have good coverage. So basically use all of that data to build the model. Figure out the right model to build. Is the model that I need to build, there are a lot of technical terms associated with this. I'm trying to do a prediction, a regression. I'm trying to do a classification or clustering scenario, what have you. And then once I figure all of that, I start taking that data, cleansing it, correlating it, building a model. So now I have a formula, a mathematical formula that can give me an answer whether that customer is more likely to leave or not. And then I decide the next set of actions. So again, the benefit of machine learning is just not for the sake of doing machine learning, it's for the sake of improving my business, doing something that reduces the amount of human activity that I need to spend time on. So the system at the end maybe will recommend that I give this particular customer a new offer, a reduced fee or what have you to be able to retain them in my system. So yeah, this is quickly.
That's excellent. Look, actually, the nice thing about being sharing with this session is that I'm a novice. I'm not part of this industry, so I can look from the outside. You look at it and you see the different point of view that has been put driving, artificial intelligence and big data analytics and everything is actually digging into these things. Actually, if you look at it, you start thinking, where is this going? How am I going to comprehend this? And is it going to control me or am I going to control it? So this creates this very big question about, accountabilities and responsibilities, about the social aspects, even the regulatory aspects, all of these things. Every day, you know, that day, I don't know where one of the big organizations, that data was hacked. While somebody else, data is the next oil. So how do I make use of this data? While how do I make sure that it's not being used against me? How does it, how do I control this technology, especially that it's getting to the point where it's running itself, that it doesn't become a negative, Actually, we will call on our friend George to talk about these things, accountabilities, responsibilities, and how are we going to control this? How to make sure that it doesn't turn against us?
Good morning, but there's supposed to be a presentation. This is one. Because I'm a little bit older than most of you, this is the kind of tablets we are using at the beginning of my career. About machine learning and definitions, it's already told. We have some terminology terms, algorithms, analytics, cognitive technologies, machine learning, networks and deep learning. Okay, it's a little bit techniques. We have big data. Okay, it's everywhere. Nothing is certain, as I say, the death, taxes, and the growth of data. How we use this data, this is a problem. You know about recommendation algorithms and machines and engines. I have a personal experience because I buy books from Amazon for my wife. She likes topics like love dramas and so on. And Amazon recommends some products for me. And you can imagine what kind of products they recommend for me. Okay, I'm not so satisfied with this recommendation algorithm from Amazon. The good news are, okay, AI is a big business. According to McKinsey study, there will be about $13 trillion from this technology by 2030. And that gives some countries economic benefits and so on. Okay, but there are some risks also associated. We can find it today. For example, Siri can recognize something, voice recognition, Google. We have problems with responsibility, liability, security, and safety. There is a big problem discussing in the EU about the GDPR. I don't know if you are aware of it. Personal data, and how there is an article about that I have the right as a customer for just asking how the bank recommends me for a loan or not. If there's an algorithm there in the beginning, it's not so easy to find out who recommends what. Algorithms are all over, in every business function, from operations to finance, human resources, risk management, so on and so on. They are in every part of our life. But there are also risks associated. Let's say from the input data, from design, from output decisions, the human biases, that's the most important thing, technical, user flow, security flows, and so on and so on. That's a problem. Okay, we bypass that with strategy and governance and some measures to be discussed by the policy, by the government, or by companies. There are some examples of the risk associated, and how they find some solutions, or funny things. And the last one is a quote that I like. This is told by Dijkstra, this is a Dutch professor, late in the 70s. Okay, the question of whether I can think is no more interesting than the question of whether a submarine can swim. But since I'm not thinking, that's all. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you, George. I think from four different perspectives, we have covered four different areas related to innovation. We go back to the concept that we're talking about. You have automation. It should take over the mundane activities. I think that can be automated. And you would love to leave as much, for humans to actually focus innovation. In principle, it sounds very interesting, but in reality and implementation, it's a very difficult thing to do. Because while you're going this transformation to automation and taking machines, whether it be virtual machines or physical machine take over, while some are going to go into innovation, other people are going to go, they have to be retrained. And they have to be, in a way, if you want to use the word, one time I used it and somebody was not mad at me, they have to be reprogrammed. Actually, humans maybe have to be re-educated, the society have to be re-educated, and maybe kind of reformatted in a way that uses this concept. While it is an opportunity, it is something that has to be also looked at very carefully. The social aspects has to go hand in hand with the technological aspects. We have 15 minutes left in this session, and I think that should be plenty of time to actually solicit some questions from the audience to actually address some of the issues that might raise some questions. I ask you to keep the questions, we want to maximize the chances for everybody to actually contribute to this. And please address the question. If it's directed to a specific person or as general, then we will see who will be able to actually address this question. Please. We'll start from there. Okay, then we'll keep on scanning left and right. Please. There are microphones. Mr. Absharat.
Ismi Fadi, and I have a question. I have two kids now, 10 and 5. What advice can you give me if they ask me, Daddy, like, what I want to be in the future? Like, what are the professions because like many of the traditional professions we have today will be kind of eliminated. So what kind of advice I can give my kids regarding to that? Thank you.
Can I take this? So, first question. I have two boys, 16 and 11, and I was having a heart-to-heart with my 16-year-old just 2 weeks ago on just this very conversation. He goes to traditional schools which are international in nature. All of us do send them to great schools, but we go through a certain learning process that was written in the 1930s. And so you and I know that for a fact, that you or I cannot substantially alter the education system. We will have to go with it and enable some additional complementary behavior, which is in the form of lifelong learning. It's a 24/7 window of learning. So what does it mean is for us to appreciate that if a kid is going to school and learning 3 or 4 subjects and he gradually goes towards the higher end of complexity in those subjects, we have always looked at it as a function of inputs to outputs. We've never reversed that conversation to say, to what end is this education being put in? Now, that question becomes very relevant in the context of kids is, what do I do when I grow up? The whole point is that I don't know. I don't know what I'm going to be doing in the next 5 years, and that is an unfortunate fundamental reality. Our children do not expect us not to know, and I think we should be honest.
We don't know that either. We can only speculate to a point. But what we know is a couple of things that anybody needs to have as foundations. And one is the ability to communicate, whatever be the language. You have to be able to interact because it is not a single soul model. Second is the ability to think. And thinking does not come by learning coding alone. You will have to enable it through engineering, through science, through mathematics. And the third is the ability to converse and have intelligent discussions, disagreements. Can we enable our children to do that? So to your question, and that's exactly what I was telling my children as well, I don't know what you'll be doing in the future. All these predictions you can read to Kingdom Come, and every 3 years there will be a brand new set of jobs. Today's sexy jobs are data scientists, right? 3 years ago it was data analytics, and another 5 years it is going to be AI specialists, right? Right now AML and pattern recognition are your favorite job types. It will change in the next 5 years. We don't know where we are going. The whole point is that let's try and equip ourselves to a certain future that is A, ambiguous, B, extremely vague, 3, extremely well-connected, and 4, extremely complex. So let's not simplify life. So, sorry, a very complex answer to a very simple question, but I would see it that way.
Actually, that's a very nice question. Each of us have a boy and children that ask the same question. Yeah, please go ahead. I think it fits.
Thanks for your question. This question has a very special meaning for me because one of my goals is to establish a robotic club to inspire children, a robotic and coding club. I think children can be inspired by giving them the capacity to ask questions and to explore what is AI and what is not AI. And I think engaging children in artificial intelligence concepts with games will be helpful to achieving that.
I would like to add to that. I would teach them, maybe a little bit funny, but I would teach them linear algebra and probability theory. But in all seriousness, everybody should know how to code. Hopefully your kids will be talented in something specific that they will have a passion for, and hopefully they'll grow up to basically be excellent in that. But whatever you do nowadays, you have to have some basic coding skills, HTML, CSS, understanding of data and how to take advantage of data. Wisdom comes from information. Information comes from data. So at the end of the day, we as human beings and how we take the next action as a human being. I'm implementing, my historical interaction with a particular person, a set of events. So how to analyze data and how to effectively take an action based on that data. That's how human beings work. That's why it's called machine learning and artificial intelligence. But I think a solid foundation in math, a solid foundation in at least computer skills, basic ones, are needed for any profession in the future. And today.
I think you hit a very role. It's okay. And then we'll go here and then we'll go.
Good morning. Thank you very much for this session. I want to start where the moderator ended with the social aspect of it. A few months back, Jason Silva, a YouTube personality, sat where you're sitting right now, and he summed it up. The difference between the fourth industrial revolution and the first industrial revolution is that humanity had the time to react and really produce the jobs for people during the first industrial revolution. This time around, we do not have the time to react. The change is much faster than a human pace. So what we need to do, in my opinion, is to add a socioeconomic and a socio-political layer. Otherwise, we're going to see polarity globally, and we've started to see polarity in political views, and that could destruct us. This is an aspect that I would personally love to see in this panel on how can we address the changes that are coming on a social level. That's the last point that we started. Okay. And convince people that change is not as bad as it's going to be. Another aspect is we're going to push towards singularity. Whether you believe that singularity is going to happen or not is irrelevant, because we're going to push, humanity is going to push towards singularity. And that push will make current jobs even more obsolete. So that's another aspect to address. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Does anyone want to address this?
I do a lot of work on the policy front with governments around the world. Let's start with a separate point on singularity. Yes, it's great to build presumed singularity is just in the near-term future, possibly thanks to quantum computing we might get there faster. The biggest challenge is human cultures and traditions over the last 300 odd years of documented history at least have not reflected replacements. The old has never been replaced by a newer model. What you have seen instead is that the new is layered on top of the old, right? It just, maybe if you're from the city, if you look at the mud itself, just the city, you probably find 5 different layers. I'm not talking economic segregation as much as it is thinking segregation, you know, the kind of businesses people do or the way in which they relate to each other. And this is true around the world. So singularity, I think, is perhaps, in my personal view, probably a foolhardy goal to pursue that. Having said that, the socio-economic element and construct is always premised on those layers. Can we bring those layers together? So what is the measure of success? It's that there is A, no poverty, right? That's positively what we want. B, we want everyone gainfully employed. And 3, we want everyone to be ready for an uncertain future. So that's where policy comes to play. Having said that, policy does not happen in isolation. See, industry cannot run its pace and hope for the government to catch up. That's the problem around the world. The kind of work we do is premised on making policy run as fast as all of you. And it never catches up because you and I don't look beyond a 5-year balance sheet, whereas a government does not look less than a 20-year generation. And there's a huge gap. So I think we have to collaborate. So the measures of success is socio-economic. What it means is, in technology context, ICT for development, right? Doing well by doing good. If we can embed those models, I think each country might take a different path on its way to success, but eventually you will be able to manage social goals with economic goals in an effective manner. Many countries have gotten to do that, but it is collective responsibility. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Dr. I teach medicine at the University of Jordan. And I'm very glad that I was able to attend this meeting because Mr. Nidal allowed me to come in. I would like to have 2 comments. Number 1, regarding what you should have your kids learn. Please don't forget poetry. Please don't forget music. Please remember that these are very important attributes that make life very nice and very interesting. And I hope you do that. Now that said, my other comment is the following. I find that we really feel what we do not comprehend. And I tell you, as a doctor, I keep on listening to the robots, to this and that. I'm not afraid, because we have lived through many advances, and none of them has taken the place of what you as a person think. However, a smart person makes sure that they continue to be ahead of the curve. And when I first came to the University of Jordan, I was only typewriting. You know, the IBM was wonderful, it was an electrical machine. Then the computer came, now we use PowerPoint, we use, but it is still the same information. So I find that 2 things have been happening. All of this beautiful revolution has gone in the absence of people like myself. We are afraid because we don't know that this is going to be useful to us. So may I urge that these subjects be taught at the university level. To, in fact, people like, I would love to do medical students to teach them how to make apps. For example, you are worried about diabetes. No, I'm going to go beyond the robot. We're doing much more than that. And we know what we want. My problem is that I know, but I don't know the pilot who is going to carry me there. So I really think there should be more interaction, and I do hope that in the future much more interaction can happen between all of these fields, because this is going to be something that's useful for all of us, provided we don't feel left out. That's all. And that's why I was a little bit concerned that I don't have the time to really talk about this, because I don't think there are many other people other than all of you from IT.
Thank you.
And I urge you to invite others like me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Zaid Arima, Hussein Technical University. I got my question in 2 parts. Thank you for your comments. First question is, since most of you gentlemen and ladies coming from the private sector, are we doing a good job connecting with universities to bridge the gap, since We are advancing so much. I'm a private sector myself, I used to be, and now in the academia. And we're saying in the presentation that robots coming from, in a very speedy way, taking over human jobs. But at the end of the day, somebody got to program those robots. Intaj doing a great job at providing us with slides every once in a while, saying that 2020 we got 1 million job vacancies in coding. Is the private sector doing a good job by steering some of the universities on what those kids need to learn? We keep talking AI, we keep talking machine learning, deep learning, all that stuff. But did we break it down into small components so we can steer those kids into the right education? Thank you.
Thank you. Let's take another question. Costa, if you are out, please, Salim.
Thank you, Salim Karachi. My concern is that technology, the revolution we're witnessing is not inclusive. We have a company like Amazon that can buy Jordan 15 times and save the cost of labor 17 times, and so on and so forth. And even within a certain society, the gap between the haves and the have-nots has widened. So, and we just heard from Muhammad, he just killed all intelligent jobs, intelligent jobs, and Samah did the same. Bobby killed all the mundane jobs at the bottom, the little jobs, etc. Okay, and we say everybody can code, and tomorrow coding will be automated. So, I mean, there are legitimate concerns that, the population of the world is increasing, the wealth is not distributed. What does society need to do to figure that out so that we don't have alienated people that a revolution at the end of the day?
Okay, well, please.
Yeah, I just want to comment quickly on the medical applications of machine learning. I take care of an older parent myself, and basically one of the things that you started with typically in taking care of a senior parent is basically the drug applications, drug dosage, the timing of the dosage, the interactions between the different drugs. And you typically go and see your doctor once every 2 months, 3 months. They don't know at all what's happening to you throughout the rest of that period. There isn't a lot of data that we capture and that we share with the doctor. And even if you do, the doctor doesn't do much with it, right? If you go to the doctor, and I do go to the doctor with 6 pages of observations, and I sit and read through all of that, and he listens to me for 30 minutes, and then he might give me a recommendation to change the dosage or maybe have it at a different time of the day, but he will not see the impact of that until 2-3 months later. So I think there's a lot of application for that area specifically for medicine, where you're tracking the vitals, maybe when affected device tracks the vitals of the patient and maybe additional things that he can track down, and then have machine learning algorithms find the patterns and different interactions between different drugs that you're taking and how they could be basically adversely affecting you as a patient. So we can talk offline if you'd like.
Okay. Anybody would like to address final points by Zaid and Salim, because time is up. We need 30 seconds each, with the permission of the organizers. We'll take a couple of minutes.
The question should also be answered. Mr. Salim, great points. Let's have a quick offline chat on Humanity 2.0 as to what you're alluding to. Sir, to your question on academics, there is a fundamental challenge across the world. And one is that should education systems remain within the context of knowledge delivery and not get too very caught up in the operationalization of that knowledge in terms of translation to jobs. This has been a constant challenge. It is not going to go away anytime soon. What we need to do instead is twofold actions. Knowledge, because you structure knowledge over an 18-year, 20-year window of a student's, of an individual's learning. You cannot shrink that as easily as you would like to. I will continue. It needs to be complemented. 2 things. At the tertiary level, industry can complement. Industry does not work closely with universities anywhere in the world outside of the United States. That has to fundamentally change, and all of us in this room have to make that happen. Secondly, we tend to look down upon vocational training institutions. They need to be brought into the fold, and we keep arguing all the time that if we brought them into the fold, they are the ones who are much closer to applicability as opposed to...
Well, I have to interject because they're going to... Please, Samah, 30 seconds, please.
I want to highlight a point. I want to back the point of the risks and challenges associated with applying the artificial intelligence and robotics. I was discussing with a colleague yesterday that one of the basic skills that we surviving skills that we have as humans is the social skills and being able to gather in groups and being a social creations. I think if artificial intelligence reach a point where it replaces our social relationships, then the disaster starts. Another thing I would like to add is we are being affected by the artificial intelligence. One of the examples, when we look at the current robots, commercial robots existing in the market, we see a lot of female robots. So our concept, our stereotype on gender, for example, is affecting the robotics, the artificial intelligence. One of them is Sophia robot. When they present Sophia robot, it says, friend me on Facebook. This looks funny, but when you look deeply from a humanitarian point of view, you know that we are affecting the artificial intelligence, and they will affect us back in future if we do not control this revolution.
Thank you. Thank you, Ben. Samah.
My opinion is we are missing a common language. This is an example I said before, GDPR, EU regulation, were made by lawyers without asking IT people. Now we have a problem in the EU. AI, the United States say the EU will be behind the AI because of this law. There's missing a common language between IT guys, IT people, AI people, and the common people.
Thank you. I think that's a good point to stop. We thank you very much. For me, it was a very interesting session. I hope it was for you. Actually, I'm glad that it raised more questions than it answered. This is an ongoing task that will go, ongoing dilemma that we have to answer. It's a challenge. The world is going exponential. The world is going to go towards singularity, whether we like it or not. It's for us to catch up. I think our kids understand this 10 times better than we do. As one guy once mentioned it, they are the original inhabitants of the technology. We are the migrants to that part of the world. I'm sure 10 years from now, the same discussion takes place, the context will be completely different, and the problem discussed will be even completely different. We thank you very much. We enjoyed having you here. Thank you, dear panelists. It has been a pleasure having you here.
Ladies and the panelists, wow, thank you so much. Wonderful, thank you. Got to ask you to leave the stage. Thank you so much, and we will move on now to our next session. Remember, not just this panel discussion here, but the discussions we've had yesterday. We've had some very intriguing comments, some great questions as well, some at times controversial ideas also. So just remember everything that went on yesterday and today. If you go onto the live stream, and you can do that later on this evening, next week perhaps, you can go back and see everything that happened and all the questions as well. So as a resource, it's there, and I believe in the future as well, we'll be editing the whole complete live streaming file, and that will be chopped up, edited, and popped onto YouTube as well. So you can, again, have a look and hear exactly what went on yesterday and today. Right, we move on now to our next session, all about cyberspace. So when we think about cyberspace, naturally some fundamental needs we need to think about: keeping it safe, keeping it secure, and naturally keeping it reliable as well. Very simple things to talk about, quite difficult things to actually do. As time goes on, certainly it's more of a challenge day by day. So this discussion hopefully will answer a few questions, give you a few insights, and perhaps some suggestions and ideas. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage the moderator who's going to shape this discussion forward. Please welcome the President and CEO of Professionals for Smart Technology, Rula Amouri. While Rula is actually just popping on her mic, if the panelists can please join us on stage. Rue's just getting a mic on. If you could just take a seat while she does that.
So good morning everybody. كل عام وانتم بألف خير. إن شاء الله سنة هجرية مباركة على الجميع. Welcome my panelists. Actually, I have a great pleasure and pride to be moderating this panel with a very distinguished guests. Many of them have traveled overseas and across the region to join us today and share with us their invaluable knowledge and experience. So thanks for coming. I would like to introduce them. So we have with us Mr. Jerry Werteliki. He is the Managing Director and CEO at Cloud Transformation and Security Solutions. He was also a partner at Ernst & Young for over 27 years, during which he established and led the IT and risk advisory practices both in the US and Asia Pacific. So welcome, Mr. Jerry.
Thank you.
We have also Dr. Yahya Salatan, Chairman of the Palestine IT Association of Companies, PITA, and CEO of Jaffa.net Software. He is an internet security and blockchain expert with 9 USA and EU registered patents in the field. Wow, very impressive. Ahlan wa sahlan. We have also Dr. Muhammad Hamoudi, an old colleague also, though he's much younger than me. He's the Information Security Risk Manager at the IMF with more than 15 years of experience in the field of cybersecurity. He has PhD in cybersecurity from George Washington University and an MBA from Georgetown University. So, Mr. Alauddin Dandiz, he is the Information Security Manager at Souq.com, which is a subsidiary of Amazon. We all know Amazon using it, so welcome, Mr. Ala. Mr. Khalid Samara, the Chairman of Middle East Network Operators Group, MINOJ, and a telecom and ISP expert with extensive experience in internet, mobile engineering, and security technologies. Last but not least, Mr. Mahmoud Abu Zannat, the Commercial Enterprise and Home Broadband Executive Director at Omnia, Jordan, with 20 years experience across various leading operators in the telecom industry. He is passionate for introducing new services for different segments. We are interested to know about this. So welcome everyone. And actually I would like to start by a comment on the following the previous panel discussion. It was really very interesting to see all the advancement and modernization of technology that's happening nowadays. We can see this happening everywhere, in every field, even in our personal lives. The way we interact, the way we do businesses and so on. We know about e-government services, and in the private sector as well, we started to hear about digital banks and online banks. certain banks that does not exist in terms of branches, in terms of physical interaction. You can just reach them online through the internet. So with all of these modern revolution in technology, it's bringing a lot of good things to us and to our lives. And we can see that businesses are becoming, or technology becomes the main foundation for most of the businesses. But also with all of that, it comes with a lot of threats and a lot of challenges and a lot of fears in terms of privacy, in terms of security, in terms of confidentiality as well. So from this perspective, I would like to start by to ask Mr. Jerry the question that as we know that today cybersecurity it becomes a major concern for everybody. What do you think is the right approach that organizations has to follow in terms of ensuring that they have established and built the right infrastructure, knowing that it has a multi-layers and it has multi-dimensions that starts from the physical basic infrastructure of the network and the servers, going through the database and the applications up to the end-user access and also having all of the governance and risk management on top of all of that. What's the approach that you recommend for organizations to adopt to ensure that they are really taking every aspect and every recommendation into consideration?
Well, that's a great question, Paul. I think, with cybersecurity in particular, what's happening is companies are really struggling. I still remember back in 2012 when company hacks were just real big news. Now today, hacking is an everyday occurrence. So with that, I think the best thing that I like to tell my clients is you have to really have a structured approach. And you really have to understand all the key points of risk within your organization. So one of the recommendations that we give to our clients is establish a framework. We use the NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology Framework. That's a pretty well recognized standard. It's a U.S.-based standard from the U.S. Department of Commerce, and it's very comprehensive, and it takes you through a very structured approach. Although there are multiple frameworks you can use. There's COBIT and quite a few other ones, which I won't get into too much detail. But the most accepted standards, and I'd like to hear from my panelists as well, is the NIST standard. So you have to look at, there's a layered approach. And I know I had some slides, I don't know if we're going to show them or not, but really there's 6 layers of security that you would have to take a look at. And again, it has to be very structured. So that starts with your device, and then you look at, this thing here. This thing here can be one of your biggest risk factors within your organization. Then after that, you have to take another layer of perspective. You start getting into the infrastructure, and then you start looking at the networks, the databases, the applications. And then you have to look at who has access within those organizations. So you almost have to go through a mapping process or a mapping structure using, some framework. Again, there are multiple frameworks out there, but NIST is probably the most popular in the U.S. and Hong Kong as well.
Excellent. So from there, probably we move to Yahya. And here, we are all hearing about all the new technologies that's now taking role in many aspects, and even in the mainly in the security of our transactions and the way we are doing business. How do you see that these technologies, such as blockchain, where you have the expertise on this, how blockchain is really playing a role in achieving a better security for that? Because with all the precautions and the recommendations and taking all the rules and regulations into consideration, establishing our infrastructure infrastructure, we still have these fears and these worries about the confidentiality. How the new technologies would really advance that and improve it further?
Excellent question. Let me just make a disclaimer here. Whatever I'm going to talk about blockchain does not necessarily applicable to Bitcoin. Although Bitcoin is built on blockchain, so I will be talking on the technological principle of blockchain more than the implementation of Bitcoin. So let me just start with this disclaimer. Let me just take you a short trip to the future, if you will. And that's where the advancements of technology should actually rely on. In today's health world, and I'm inspired by the physician who was talking about before, if I go as a patient to a clinic, very unlikely that clinic may have an automated or computer system. Let me just start with the best scenario. They do have a software to manage my data. So a month later, I go to another clinic. They probably, in the best case scenario, they may have a software to register my data and the medication they gave me and diagnosis, and so on, my life goes on. Guess what? If I go to the first clinic, they start from scratch the first time. The second clinic, they do the same, and they don't talk to each other. Why? Because the principle of ownership of data is actually relying on the provider, not on me. What blockchain is actually endorsing, that individuals are actually the owner and the manipulator of data. Imagine the following. All the problems Jerry was talking about is actually manipulation of data. Hacking, because we actually give the data ownership and manipulation to Big Brother. Big Brother means government, or even Facebook or Google and the like. With blockchain technology, data goes back to the individuals. So the trip I want you to take with this future, which is just right at the doorfront of our daily lives. With the blockchain in place, I am, as a patient, will be owning the data, manipulating the data, and giving the right for the physician to look and probably edit the data per my visit. So if I go to clinic A, I give them the right to actually access my data and update it. I finish the visitation, I go to another clinic, I give them the right, they have access to the same data, they can update it. If I go from Palestine to Jordan, and I go to a physician in Jordan, I give them the right to do the same if I go to even any other place in the world. So the data comes back to the owner of the data. This is one dimension, if you allow me. I will take another example, is the banks. The whole idea of the blockchain actually started with the financial crisis in 2008, when the whole banking sector, especially the industrial countries, is actually almost collapsed or have a crisis. Why? Because we put so much trust into the banks, and that trust manipulated our money, and so on and so forth. So what blockchain is actually giving you now? To eliminate the trust you are actually putting in the third party, which is the banks in this case. So if your health matters, if your money matters to you, if your any value that you may have, whether it's a real estate you own, a poetry that you actually authored, or a painting that you actually paint, and you want actually to manage this data and to manage this intellectual property that you may have, blockchain is the right way and the right technology to do it for you. The fundamental issue I wanted to close on this is blockchain is give us a very secure protocol for us to actually manipulate our data, manage our data, and eliminate all the big brothers in between. And the opportunity here is actually immense for this region, but I will probably be talking about it later on in this session. So one thing I wanted to close is consider blockchain, or me as endorsing the blockchain as the future of the revolution, if you will, in computation. Is actually, I would be the representative of tech republic of value, because what you have is a value. Keep it for yourself. Don't trust others. The fundamental of the blockchain, nobody is trusted, but the system is trusted. In 2006 or 7, I actually was a senior engineer in the security group at Sun Microsystems in Silicon Valley. Eric Schmidt at that time was the CTO of Sun. Then he became the chairman of Google and so on. So his opening statement for 300 senior engineers gathered, Sun is no longer hire geniuses. Wow. Why are you bringing us here as a senior engineers just to tell us that we are not genius or we are not smart? And he continued to say, Sun, put all collective intelligence of the individuals in the system. Blockchain, the trust in the system, not in the big brother.
So Yahya, what you're saying is really very optimistic, and I really hope reality would bring all of this with it. But today we hear about around 2.5 million threats per second, cyber threats per second. Do you think this technology would really reduce this number, and we can really live in a better status and a better level of security, of cyber security than what we have today?
I'm not saying that blockchain will solve every problem in the world of security, for sure. But I think as a protocol, what distinguishes blockchain from others, the fundamental building block of IP, which is the internet protocol, is actually built on non-secure protocol, which is the IP, the internet protocol. With the blockchain, the fundamental components of blockchain is actually built in security. So it implements the public key infrastructure, the private and public key with digital signature. And what is actually a block? It's a very simple way, by the way. So don't be afraid that blockchain is very complicated and it needs PhDs and what have you to actually. It's so simple. It's a data hashed, which is a sort of a distilling of that data in a secure way with a proof of work somebody has done. So, and a link to the previous block. So the protocol itself is actually very secure. All the transactions, in a sense, you build on top of this secure protocol is going to be secure. It's different than, for example, one may say SSL. SSL came as a protocol of security on top of HTTP or transport layer. In blockchain, the fundamental building block of the protocol itself is security. That's one thing. Another thing which is very important, that blockchain is not only applicable to cryptocurrency. Blockchain is actually, you can do what they call it smart contracts and distributed application. And that's the beauty of it. Describing those applications and having those applications actually implemented and executed on top of blockchain will definitely make all of these applications fundamentally and from the DNA of that applications to become somehow secure. So, so we are in the verge of seeing a collaborative, massive environment of computation lies in the hands of the individuals. So as your mobile, if you would like to actually join the execution of a distributed application, can actually earn money while you're sitting and listening to me rambling about blockchain. And that's what I think the future of value and the future of contribution, and it's all secure.
But with all of that being said, and also by implementing the cybersecurity framework, which Jerry started with, and utilizing the most advanced technologies such as blockchain, and with all of these concepts, actually on behalf of the audience and everybody, we all believe that there is nothing that is risk-free. And it really comes with a lot of risk. And these are the fears, actually, that is holding us back from adopting the technologies more and more, and from changing the culture of people that's using it. I would ask the question to Mohammed here, as an expert in cybersecurity and also specialized in risk management. How do you see that we can really mitigate the risk? What are the other elements and the other factors that we have to take into consideration beside the technology in order to have a more secure infrastructure and solutions and technologies that we are using nowadays?
So if you look at the cybersecurity space, basically awareness is growing at the enterprise level, but so the confusion. In a recent study by McKinsey, 75% of the audience said we deal with cybersecurity as a strategic risk in our organizations. But when they asked them, how are you ready to withstand a cybersecurity attack and sustain and recover from that attack, they said only 16% said yes, we have an appropriate information security program. And the reason for that is two things. I think the main focus so far is to protect the server compared to protecting the business. Protecting the server is basically, we're talking about technology security, technology risk. There is something called information risk, which is more bigger and more important than technology risk. For us, if you look what big enterprises do, technology risk for them is a basic cyber hygiene. It's a basic component that has to be there. I'm not saying it's a simple thing, it's very complicated, but if you want to have a sound cyber security program, you have to maintain a cyber security hygiene. That's what we call technology risk, or as I said, basic cyber security hygiene. If you want to go to the next level to manage the risk, you have to do two things. You have to understand your business, and you have to integrate cyber security program in every aspect of business processes or business departments. To understand your business, the first thing you need to do is to look at the threat landscape. The threat landscape is growing in terms of complexity and in terms of pace and number of threats out there, but you need to understand your organization. What do you do, and who's out there trying to attack you, and what type of weapons do they have against you, what type of vulnerabilities they can use to attack your organization. The second thing that you need to do is to integrate your risk management framework into the business. Means that whenever there is a new system or a new application, procurement usually lead the process, right? But if information security team is not involved, you may end up with buying a technology from, I'm not talking about the technology here, I'm talking about the service provider. So in many organizations, what they do, whenever there is let's say a competition for an RFP, security team, they can veto certain vendors. They do like a quick security assessment about the vendor. If they think they didn't have the right security program, they can veto them and they drop them from the competition. This is how the level of integration that you need to see cybersecurity or risk management team in the organization. The third point is when we talk about understanding the business. There's a good case study about one of the big insurance companies in the world. They invested around $70 million to reshape their information security program. And a year after, only a fraction of the roadmap of the plan was implemented because it was a technology. They dealt with it as a technology issue, not as a business issue. What they did after that, after they realized the mistake that they did, they went back, they spoke with the business. They identified what are the crown jewels of the organization, which information assets or systems we need to protect. because you cannot apply the same security everywhere. You have to know, understand your business, understand what are the crown jewels of your organization, and then apply the appropriate security to protect those assets.
So it's a misconception that people think that cybersecurity is about technology, about hardware and software. I would say from what you said that humans and people and their understanding and their knowledge and their capabilities is really a key factor in ensuring a secure infrastructure and secure implementation of like digitalization and automated solutions. So from there I would go to Ala. Like, how do you see that, what's the capabilities of our human resources here in the MENA region and probably also in Jordan? What's the level of capabilities and expertise that we have in cybersecurity that can really help in adopting the framework that Jerry talks about, the new advanced solutions and technologies that Yahya was also explaining, and to mitigating the risk by all of the actions and things that we have to adopt to minimize the risk of these solutions. How do you see the human factor on this formula, on this circle?
Thanks, Rula. So in fact, we have done a very good job, let's say, in the 10 years before, in order to build up security engineers' capabilities here in the region, in order to defend our data and our system for a long time. But so far, we are facing the same challenge. More and more time, we are trying to secure our environments and to secure our code, by the way. So, as an enterprise, on the enterprise level, we faced most of challenges in the beginning, let's say by the end of the first decade, by introducing the security governance as one of the concepts that should be realized, and risk management in the context of security that should be integrated with the enterprises measure as the were introduced. But let's say in the ground, what are we seeing right now? We see that we have security engineers, most of them still under the networking and systems background. In time, we are in the region, introducing and provisioning tons of code and tons of softwares. I don't want to say per year, but actually per month. So many software industries are now introducing these software here and there, and still we are lacking the basic functionalities, how to secure them. We are using very good tools in the world, but still the tools are not enough. Still we lack the secure coding. Still we lack how to use powerful encryption within our systems. Blockchain, as Saklan said, is one of the things that is emerging in the markets, but still we are facing attacks on the blockchain deployments. Why? Because some of the engineers that are trying to develop this framework still lacking basic secure coding practices and how to utilize these things inside. In the last panel, the panelists discussed what is the gap between academia and the industry. Still, we have this gap, introducing more and more problems, because I spent, let's say, 4 or 5 years in the university. After that, I will try from scratch just to come up with the industry training, and I'm stuck all the time. What kind of trainings I have in the market? It's still under the systems and networking background. So I did many trainings, I did many interviews with many people. We are trying to find somebody, some engineer that has this capability. So if we need now to reshape the security engineer position and what the reflection would be on the market, actually, he has first to write his own tools. So security engineer should be strong and have very solid programming skills. The second thing, security engineers, even equipped with powerful tools in the world, commercial tools, but still each environment is unique by itself. So we have to bridge the gap with custom solutions or custom code, custom scripts should be there in each environment, at least to bridge two spaces under the security solutions. So we have the compromise space solutions, and we have the fraud detection space solutions. So far, we don't find any connection between them. So security engineer here is the one that can write and integrate these things, and the one that can secure these spaces in a way that can provide value for the organization.
So we can say that really people are the key things, but the three cornerstones to ensure this, the good cybersecurity level is people, processes, and technology. Yes. So it's not only technology, it's not only processes and frameworks and so on, but also human factor here. Yes.
You can buy technology. You can get someone to build the business process for you. But if you don't have the right people, the skilled people, the right governance around the technology and the process, good luck.
I would very much endorse the statement because we
technology,
need people who can make the difference.
Exactly. Technology comes, any tool comes with hundreds of switches. You decide which switch you want to turn on.
Yeah.
That's a big decision that you need to take.
Yeah, you're totally right, really. In everything, actually, everything in life, people that makes the difference. Yes. If they have the knowledge, if they have the expertise, then definitely they can. I would move to Khalid here, and I would like to ask you about the internet here. How do you see is the internet space and the cloud space here, and what are how it is like helping and supporting and having our solutions, especially when it is cloud-based, we access it over the internet and all of this, they are really secure, especially now everybody's moving into cloud solutions and everybody has to utilize the internet like to adopt their businesses and to conduct their businesses in an automated and digitalized manner. And what are the attributes of the internet that would really factor here and help on ensuring that?
Thank you. I have just some comments about the recent discussion. First of all, if we talk about responsibility, about securing our cyberspace, we are talking about collaboration and sharing responsibility. And if we talk about sharing responsibility between all stakeholders, in the spirit of sharing responsibility and also collaboration. And once we say we need to share all stakeholders, we talk about the internet ecosystem, including users, including open standard development teams, including naming and addressing communities, including capacity building, education, government, users, communities, all the entities that are helping the internet to keep up and evolve. This is the basic part of we need to secure our cyberspace. No one is responsible alone to secure our cyberspace. It is like shared responsibility between all others. Answer to your question about how we need to focus to ensure that our internet is stable, resilient, and secure. From my point of view, from our experience in the Middle East as MENAICT, we see this should be coming from, if we need to secure the internet, we should secure the main internet identifiers, starting from domain names, then routing, other parameters, and port numbers. And basically, if we need to secure our services, that all of them are built over two main identifiers, domain names and routing. Domain names now, if I need to just address some attacks like DNS hijacking, DNS tunneling, DNS poisoning, lots of attacks. And there are lots of mitigation techniques that nowadays are trying to counter these attacks. But mainly I will try to address some new of the techniques that already mentioned by open development teams from the ecosystem, like engineering task force, internet engineering task force. It is the domain name system security extension. It's called DNSSEC. They're trying to utilize this extension, security extension, to maybe counter some kind of attacks. Out of technical details, I would say, like, I need to make sure that my host or I am as a client, I need to have the right response to reach the correct website without any kind of hijacking or phishing or redirection. From technical point of view, it's helped the domain name administrator zone to authenticate the DNS response. Unfortunately, out of 14 countries in the Middle East, we have just 3 countries that have DNS enabled. Hopefully, we'll have it in Jordan soon, inshallah, in our top-level domain to Jordan. This part, this is my comment about the first main identifier. The second one about routing, securing the routing. There was initiative started 2011. It's maybe started from the collaborative security between from network operators and working with the other ecosystem parts. It's called MENAICT, mutually agreed norms for routing security. It helps the network operators and if you are network operators and if you follow like 4 steps to mitigate your routing space, you will have more security routing protocol, you will have more performance in your network, starting from filtering, anti-spoofing, coordination, global, I think, validation also, and also it can be like implemented over internet exchange point. Unfortunately, also we don't have exchange point in Jordan, and out of also Middle East, we have just 50% of the exchange point already enabled. So if you have exchange point and you can enable those mitigation techniques and nodes inside your internet exchange point, you will have more reliable routing protocol. So my 2 notes here from out of this quick brief, we need to focus on collaboration and shared responsibility between all ecosystem parts. All of us are responsible about securing ourselves, securing our internet, our cyberspace. Second point, if we need to secure our internet, we should start from first priority to secure our main internet identifiers, start from routing domain, then domain name system, routing domain, then jumping to other parameters like protocols and other, from layer 4 to layer 7. I don't like to go through more technical details inside the session, but this is my whole idea about how to secure and how to have the flexible and secure and good performance infrastructure backbone to carry other upper layer applications.
So from there, Mahmoud, we see that telecom operators' model have been changing over the past years, and it's evolving and changing over time. And it starts not only providing the basic telecom infrastructure and telecommunication for voice or data, but also started providing value-added solutions and services to the clients, and especially to enterprises in terms of hosting, like infrastructure as a service or platform as a service, and up to the software as a service as well. How do you see that the telecom operators nowadays are really playing a role in ensuring the security, the cyber security of the enterprises that they are serving, while they are really providing such kind of advanced services?
Yes, thank you. Very interesting question, actually. Mobile operators worldwide, previously or lately, been trying to find new adjacent services and new revenue streams. You know, they've been stagnating in the voice revenues. SMS is declining. The growth today is in the internet side, but all and most of mobile operators today, they're looking for the 4th curve of new revenues, which is a multiple of curves, and one of them is very interesting, which is the security services that today we are providing as mobile operator / an ISP. Whether was that for the B2B or B2C businesses. For the B2B in specific, we've decided to move ahead and provide cloud services, security services, and any mobile payment services, all other new adjacent businesses at Omnia. For the security services, we see lots of traction, demand, requests from large enterprises to start talking to MSPs actually, and basically they don't want to build their own department of security, they want to focus on their main business, they need a 24/7 technical support, and this is where we believe our role comes in. But the fact that we have an existing relationship with our existing customers, whether on the traffic side or on the billing side, we also can provide them with a clean pipe for the traffic. We also have the authority to limit the traffic. We also can provide an in-depth security service for these customers. We know IT managers or the technical guys at any enterprise, they don't want to keep adding boxes and boxes to their infrastructure as much as they believe today their networks became borderless to for the ecosystem overall. The fact, for example, banks, they provide username and password to their customers to access their infrastructure, therefore they're borderless today. And they don't want to add more responsibilities to their employees. This is where we believe we can become, as a mobile operator, an ISP, as a partner to the enterprises in order for us to support them.
So, Jerry, what's your reflection on what Mahmoud said, as you are a player also in the cloud area, and you have been like establishing a cloud transformation businesses? What's your reflection on this?
Well, that's a good question. I think what we're seeing from demographics, everyone's moving to the cloud. I mean, it's inevitable. The whole world will be on cloud. And there are some companies that are on cloud that don't even know it. So it's kind of interesting. But I think another point I want to bring out before this is I think one of the most critical risk factors that companies really are struggling with is the tone at the top from the CEOs. I think the CEOs really are struggling to understand how much money they should spend on cybersecurity, what are the risk factors, and then you have that basic problem before you even get into the cloud. And then I think, for example, I have some CISOs, Chief Information Security Officers, who are just nervous about their jobs. They're calling me saying, Jerry, can you find my next position potentially? You know, they're living on their next breach. And I think a lot of the C-level executives really don't understand, or maybe it's a miscommunication, I think it may be miscommunication to have a CISO or a CIO adequately explain the risk to the CEO or the people that are governing the company. And that brings into governance. But I think the tone at the top has to be pretty well established. And especially now, and getting back to your question, sorry I got off track a little bit there. But I think that's the biggest problem we have. Next to the employees clicking on a link and introducing viruses, which is a topic maybe for another day. I could elaborate on that. But if you are moving to the cloud, you do have to have a strategy, because now you're opening your data, your information, your access to outside sources. And a lot of companies, what we try to do is educate them on the fact that if you decide on a cloud-based solution, you have to integrate the risk factors associated with putting your data outside the organization. And I think it's very important. I think the major risk there is that you have someone who could hold your hand, so to speak, who's done it before, because some companies will just blatantly put out their data and not necessarily consider security. And they don't understand in a lot of cases that there's a two-tiered approach, okay? Try to get into the tiers. There's a two-tiered approach that if you put your data on AWS, for example, Amazon Web Services, Microsoft, whoever it may be, that there is a distinction of who's responsible for what security. And I think that's the biggest challenge. I've had clients, we'll just put out our data, and didn't really think through the implications of how much control that they really need to assess before they do that. Because all these service providers will provide, they'll provide you the tools, And and I'm an AWS partner, I'm a Microsoft partner. They have some fantastic tools. But the problem is, do you know how to use the tools? Do you know they're there? That's where you need somebody like a consultant who really understands the nature of these tools to properly secure the environment. But I think where we try to educate our clients before we take them through a transition, and we do it one step at a time. We don't do the Big Bang Theory. We do it like one workload at a time, one application at a time, and that there is a shared responsibility. Keyword shared. The AWS will provide you the infrastructure, the tools that they're responsible for, but you're responsible for your access controls. How do you set up your policies related to access to security? What is the governance issues? How do you integrate the governance issues into your organization with using a cloud service provider? That has to be carefully thought through in terms of making sure that you have a comprehensive solution to bringing in a cloud-based solution. So there's a lot of factors, but I think making sure that the point I want to make to the audience is it's a shared model. Okay, you are responsible for it. And then you have something that's called the service level agreement. Okay, which should include security, and that's one of the things we do. We help companies look at service level agreements to make sure to reiterate the level of support and the level of security that's required by both parties. Who's responsible for what, and what are the repercussions? I can tell you, and I don't want to take up too much time. I can go on this forever, but I'll just make it brief. We had a situation, and you probably read it in a newspaper, where one of our clients was hacked, and when they did the research, of course, it's AWS's fault or it's Microsoft's fault. But really, after they did the forensics, they found out that they did not control their end of the bargain when they looked at the agreement. So I guess the point I'm trying to make is make sure you have an agreement in place that considers security, and it's reviewed by some qualified experts.
So again, this requires high-level skills and knowledge of our people to be able to do all of that in terms of governance, assessing SLAs, taking all of these into consideration. And we all know that today there is a shortage of around 3 to 4 million position and expert in cybersecurity. What's your recommendation to both private and public sector to take this opportunity, especially in our region? We are so proud of our graduates, and we have a big number of students graduating from information technology, different domains, and we can really capitalize on these assets that we have and specialize them in cybersecurity, which would really contribute at the end to a major economy change of the country in terms of contribution to the GDP and all of that. What's the recommendation, and what kind of strategy and program both public and private should take into consideration to build up this and take this opportunity?
Thank you. The first thing I believe is internship programs so far are a very powerful tool actually in order to build up a real life and real expertise in the subject matter. So internship programs are here for a while. I believe it started as an initiative from government level, at least here in Jordan, as I know, and we have similar initiatives in the region. This is one thing, but where is the challenge? The challenge is how long this intern will be here, and what kind of skills he will earn after he finishes this internship program. Another issue, are we taking internship as something that can provide real guardians for data in the future, or just they are, let's say, spending up this year just to get an experience of 1 year so he can apply for a job in the market? So this is a challenge actually that could be taken into account. The second thing, I believe, something from academia. Let's at least focus on one or two courses. Make it something on the emerging trends, the emerging technologies. It's not about, let's say, the basics or the knowledge gathering but at least why not for the assignments, why not for the examples that are provided for those students to be something real life. So let's say each group can work on some trending technology and find a use case that is useful for the future. From the booming technologies we have right now, AI and machine learning, it's good. But one of actually the risks that was highlighted in 2018, that AI and machine learning are used now by hackers in order to attack people. So everywhere you can build up whatever platform you want now on the cloud providers. So you can build up your infrastructure out there, and you can push your code out, the hacking scripts you are using, and it will do all the analysis until it tries to simulate some patterns to behave as normal users to a legitimate system to do fraud. So this is something, it should be equipped by those students and those internships. How can they overcome these issues? How can they discover these types of attacks? The other thing, in programming languages so far, we have many programming languages in the market. Some of them are specific for data science, let's say. Some of them are good for scripting, some of them are good for business. Now, taking these programming languages as part of the specializations of those security engineers or future security engineers will make this a good change, a good jump in the future. I believe that both private sector and public sector can, let's say, put certain initiatives to share the experience between the companies and to share what kind of risks we have really in the MENA region, or especially at least here in Jordan, not just to be some separate silos and separate islands, or all silo has its own risks apart from the others. So these sharings of risks will introduce new projects, new foundations for new projects, so that this can be build the capability of the proper security engineers that we expect to see in the future.
So, Yahya, in 30 seconds, please, how do you see that, what can be done to build up capacity in the advanced technologies such as blockchain, where everybody is talking about now?
I want to be, I will think out of the box here, and I'm not going to be a cliche answer. I'll give you an example. I have a 13-year-old son, and he wanted me to challenge him. So I said, hey, Yusuf, his name is Yusuf, you have 5 days, and you go search whatever you want, and if you have any question, ask me. But in 5 days, you can come back to me and explain what blockchain is. This is to tell you, you can do it right away. If you are a CEO of a company, ask your employees the same. If you are a parent, ask your child the same. If you are a teacher, do the same. In 3 days, he asked me one question. Dad, can I actually start my own currency? I said yes. And he got so excited about the concept that he could be wealthy because he started his own currency. And then he come back to me and says, okay, can the computer, actually this PC at home, be a blockchain node? I said yes. And actually in his 4th day, he gave me an excellent, very simple layman experience what the blockchain is all about. This is to tell you that security is to emphasize the importance of the human. 80% of vulnerabilities, not in systems, is actually in the humans behind the systems. So security should be education, should be not only in the specialized who knows the RSA public key and SHA-1 and SHA-56 hash functions and so on, which we do as cryptographers. But security should be also understanding the value and the implication. Just to conclude, the cloud. Everybody would deploy the data on the cloud.
To have a question from the floor.
The data on the cloud.
Yeah, so let's have a reflection and a question from the floor probably on this matter. We have one question here. Can we have the mic, please?
As a politician, how can I trust the cybersecurity systems you are talking about while or when all of it are outsourced from foreign countries?
With blockchain, you don't have to outsource it. You can be your own destiny, and actually in blockchain, there is a private blockchain and there is also public blockchain. Public chain is like, you can open it to the whole world, and the private, you can actually restrict it to your politician, whether an organization, school, government, or a region, or just for Jordan. So in that sense, you don't have to rely on the outsiders. It's actually blockchain fundamentally allows you to not outsource anything. But in addition to that, in blockchain, for example, and again, I'm not saying that blockchain will solve the whole problem in the world, but I think there is, you are not outsourcing, you are actually keeping and securing the value of whoever is owning it. Whether it's in Jordan or in Tokyo, if you own a property of land, no one in the world can claim that this property of land does not belong to you in Jordan, in Sharjah.
So the logical solution is blockchain.
Can I try to answer your question, sir?
Okay.
I think the question was, how can you be, you as an executive, how can you be sure your data is safe in a foreign country if you're in a cloud-based environment? Very good question. The most common way to assure that your data is secure, there are certification audits done on these facilities by Big Four firms. So what they actually do is they come in and they look at all multi-tier, like for example, I'm a former EY partner. Okay, Amazon is one of our retired EY partner, but Amazon is one of our clients. We do a very comprehensive testing, and we certify their systems. We actually give an opinion. Okay, it's called an ISAE. It's a standard opinion in the industry for data centers. Okay, ISAE 3402. So the first thing you should ask is, do they have such a report? And you know, you do your due diligence before you even sign a contract with them, because it is an opinion by a Big Four firm, and if something goes wrong, you can always try to sue them, right? Big Four has a lot of money. That's supposed to be a joke, guys. But seriously, the way to assure yourself is to get one of these reports.
Can we have time for one more question?
Unfortunately, we don't have time for one more question. But
Okay, so sorry for that. We can conclude on this. I would really close by giving one basic recommendation, that human resources are a key factor on this domain. If we have the right talent, we have the right expertise, we have the right education and training for our people, then we definitely can secure up to very high levels our businesses, our government, our individuals, and all of that. So let's take this opportunity, especially that there is a major need in the market everywhere in the world of this. And as we just said, in Jordan we have high talent and high education. We can capitalize on this, not only for Jordan, but also for the region and the world at large. Let's educate our people, focus on cybersecurity, full collaboration between private and public sector, but also awareness is a very important factor. We have to give awareness to everybody, because they are the first defenders, they are the first protectors of our life and our privacy and our businesses. So we have to give awareness to everybody, to all all sectors, even students, women, individuals. Everybody has to be aware of that to protect it and give it the first defense, and then it goes higher to the experts that we have to build up here. So thank you very much. Thanks for the panelists for their your valuable information. I think it was really very interesting. Thank you, audience, for your attention.
Ladies and gentlemen, Ruma and the panelists here on stage. Right, as you can see, lots of debate, lots of things moving on with their questions. And again, over coffee now, we can keep that debate going. Remember, it will be a very, very quick coffee, 15 minutes back here at 12 o'clock, back here at 12 o'clock for the next session. So remember, coffee is by the exhibition area. Check out the startups, have the conversations there over coffee, and we'll be back here, as I say, at 12 o'clock.